All right, I think we've given our minute for other people to start to come in. So actually, I'm going to just stop the share for a second here so we can all see each other, I hope. We're on gallery view, so we can do introductions of the three of us. And I am probably the one person who most of you have not seen here before, although I know some of you from other places. My name's Layla Ananda, and I work with Interfaith Council for Peace and Justice as a volunteer doing training and met a peace team. And Carolyn, I don't know if you want to turn off the sound. That might play sound when people arrive. It's the three dots at the bottom of the participants list. We'll get you to that. Anyway, I am delighted to be here, and I'll let turn it to Carolyn to introduce herself.
Hi, I think most of you know me. I come to Michigan from Maryland, where I used to work at the Community Mediation Center in Montgomery County there. And I have been doing this work now for well over a decade, I think, something like that. I've lost count. But I really love doing this, and so I'm really glad to be working here with Layla and Jennifer, who are fantastic. Thanks.
And Jennifer?
Hi, it's great to see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces too. So I am trained for civil and domestic mediation, case conferences, and circles. Mostly do civil and case conferences. So just a quick word of how we ended up here today. And I'm so thankful that Layla and Carolyn have joined this process to elevate it beyond just doing role plays. And I'm excited that you're all here to participate. I hopped on to the January Circle Keepers meeting to see what was going on in the courts. And in fairness to everyone in that meeting, it was the day after the insurrection. So emotions are running kind of high, but it was hard for me to hear a lot of disavowing language, distancing. Understandably, there was a lot of disgust of what was happening. But as a white person, I feel that every time I walk into a room, I carry every other white person with me, whether I agree with them or not. So part of it is, how do we begin to have conversations with people so that we can reach out and start to try and change some of the narratives that we're seeing in our country. You know, I can't put "I'm a nice white person" on my forehead. And even if I could, I think for many people of color, that is disingenuous. Because when we lose it and we lose our composure, the consequences can be lethal. So I think it's having an understanding and trying to kind of embrace some of that. So, thanks for jumping in and being interested in this. There's no charge today, but we are asking you to donate to the Michigan Indian Elders Association. And I'm going to post the link in the chat right now. It's michiganindianelders.org. And so if you click on it, you'll capture it and you'll still have it even after this meeting has ended. So circles are an indigenous practice, and we thought that this was a nice way to honor the fact that we use this indigenous practice. So hopefully you've captured the link. If for some reason you lost it, I think we can send it out in an email again later. So, okay, thanks.
Okay, well, let's get back to the presentation here, and we'll just get started. We're going to do at the beginning quite a bit of presenting, and then we will be asking for some participants in some role plays. So we hope that you will start thinking now about being a little courageous, if that's what it takes for you to be able to do some role plays. All right, so let's just get started here. There we go. So we'll just have a little quote to start ourselves off here. Arlie Hochschild, who wrote this quote, did an interview with Krista Tippett the NPR show On Being, which is really a wonderful interview if any of you have the opportunity to listen to that. Oops, sorry. All right, so we want to start out with going through a little bit of what our goals are for this workshop this morning, and then some agreements we hope that you'll be willing to sign on to. We are basically trying to present the idea of a different mindset. It may or may not be new to you, despite what it says there, but the idea that what we're about here is not to share our opinions, not to tell somebody they're wrong, not to try to convince somebody to believe other than what they already believe, although we can hope in our heart of hearts that that might happen. But what we're about here is to have a set of skills that have to do with connecting, making connections with people, and that being the primary goal of what you are doing when you talk to somebody you disagree with, as opposed to trying to set them straight. So we'll be talking quite a bit more about that, so that's all I'm going to say at the moment. And by the way, if there are questions along the way, please feel free to put them in chat, and Carolyn's going to be monitoring the chat since it's hard to see while I'm screen sharing. And we certainly are glad to answer questions or have comments along the way. So I don't think any of these agreements are too difficult for any of us, I hope. If you have an issue or a question about any of them, go ahead and put that in chat if you can. Obviously, respect for each other. If there are people sharing any personal stories today, we ask that you not share those. Those are their stories to share. But if you would like to share any of the tools that you learned today, we encourage you to do that. So hope that you will be able to be looking at your own experience and really doing some self-examination. That's a part of what we're trying to do here. As much as we can, even if we're telling somebody that we disagree with them or we think differently than them, we want to try to be inviting them in. That's really the whole point of the mindset here, is to be trying to invite people into a connection with us. We encourage you to try some things on if it's some of the skills that we present. I think a lot of them will not be anything you have not done before. They will be familiar, but I hope you'll be open to trying some new things and to being, willing to practice, being willing to make mistakes, and even my hardest thing, which is to look a little bit foolish at times if I need to try to do something new. So, Carolyn, you want to add a couple things here, or Jennifer?
Well, we have a question from Kathy here in the chat. Share tools, not personal info. How do you let people in if you don't let them see you or know you? How else can they make a connection?
Oh, I'm just talking about for this workshop. This is just agreements for the workshop. Thank you for helping us clarify that. So it's fine when you're doing this work to share personal information. In fact, it's probably vital to be sharing things about yourself as a way of helping to connect with people. I'm just talking about during the workshop today, if somebody tells something that is their story, then you don't leave the workshop and say, well, well, Carolyn told us about this time when she just had this really distressing experience, and I learned so much from it. Doesn't matter, just that's her story, not ours. I hope that clarifies. Anything else?
Yeah, I was just going to add that a lot of this work is body work. And so I'm a huge note taker also, but sometimes taking a lot of notes is a way for our brain to block out our body. So if you're trying really hard to capture every word that's being said, maybe that's a time to set your pencil and your paper down and just relax. That's different than, some of us have to keep our hands active, twisting a paper clip or knitting, and that's a different process. But it's being recorded, so Craig kindly will make sure that everyone has access to it, and then you can circle back and do that really intensive note-taking process if it feels good. But today, just try and sit in your body. Try and feel what your body's doing. Thanks.
Okay, and I'm going to go on. Any other comments or questions about anything on this page? Hearing none, we'll move on. All right, there we go. All right, Jennifer.
Okay, so I have an older dog who has decided to wander around a little bit. So if you see me dashing to the side, I'm trying to keep him from falling out of bed. So anyway, so in thinking about this process, one of the things is implicit bias, and that's a huge, huge topic. And I think most of you are probably familiar with the principles behind it, and it's somewhat outside the scope, but we wanted to do a little overview to kind of frame the context for you when you're doing this work. So we all have an affinity bias for certain things, and we have an aversion bias. And it's important to take the time to get in touch with those for yourself. They come from the rules that we learn from as early as age 4, if not sooner, and those schemas that we develop. And so sometimes it's a direct experience. You know, if I touch the stove and the stove is hot, I form a schema about the stove. If my parent touched the stove and reacted and it was hot, I still form a schema about the stove, right? So you have to start to think about how they formed and where they came from. And one of the hardest parts in this type of work is they make us risk averse. We want to go towards people we have an affinity to, and we have a harder time connecting with people that we may have an aversion to. So put that into the things to explore going forward on your own. But the goal is to learn to tolerate discomfort, to have the capacity to tolerate discomfort when you're talking with someone that you don't agree with, because you will be uncomfortable. And part of that comes from that we have an orienting response. Every animal has it. So if there's a sudden stimuli, we freeze and we're orienting to what could or could not be a threat. So we're trying to find out if there's a threat, and then we're trying to find out if we should run or if we're going to have to fight. Or sometimes freezing is an initial reaction, but your body is getting you ready to either run or fight. So the orienting response is wonderful. It keeps us safe, right? You hear the crack of a tree branch, it's going to fall. Where is that in relation to you? It's getting us ready to take care of ourselves. But the problem is when you have false alarms. So you can be in a scenario where your brain told you there was a threat, but there isn't. It's a false alarm. But your body's still going to have the same real-time reaction. So you need to have the skill set and the capacity to be uncomfortable in that feeling in that space, and to learn how to tamp that back down and not let it hijack you, because it'll be really hard to have a conversation if all you're thinking about is running away or getting into a fight, right? It won't be productive. When you're looking at your biases, you have to really dig deep. This is work, again, some of you are already doing, if not all of you. But if you just come up with a list of your biases and you don't really look at how they were formed and what's behind them, then you can just have a list of things that you're embarrassed by or that you're shameful about, right? And then the conversation can really twist. And you know, you can hear suddenly you're being obsequious or patronizing, and it's uncomfortable. So you have to look deep. And I'm going to give just a simple example for my own process. As a driver, I'm very impatient. So I have conversations with other drivers that often include the A word. So, you know, and when my daughter was young and in the back seat, I thought, yeah, I can't do this. I don't want my kid to learn the A word. So I told her I'd give her $1 every time I said it, and she made 20 bucks in 2 days. So she was cleaning up. But I realized I just substituted a different word. But then I realized I was still having this behavior of impatience and aggressiveness that I didn't want her to pick up. So changing the word wasn't enough. So I had to look at why I am so impatient. And it really comes down to the fact that I never leave myself enough time to get from point A to point B. I just don't. So when I could identify that the fact that I was late was not because that driver failed to take a right-hand turn on red or didn't get through the yellow light or is driving at 5 miles under, the reason I'm agitated is because I made myself late. So then I could take accountability for that, which immediately changed the sense of impatience, right? It was my doing, I controlled it. So then I could say, you know what, you're late, just do better next time. It's not the fault of this other driver. Then moving into the bias behind it, I grew up with family members who said things like, blue hairs get off the road, it's a gas pedal, feel free to use it. Did you get your vision test? Who certified you to drive? Very disparaging comments about older drivers. And so I found I would roll up next to somebody, and if I looked over and they were old, I would immediately say, well, of course you're driving erratically. You're too old to be on the road. Now, look at me. My hair is gray. I am now an older driver, so that irony is not lost on me. But it is amazing how long and how much work, how much conscious work it takes to change that impulse when I see an older driver to say, well, of course. So sometimes the bias continues to be carried with us, but we just have to keep having that internal conversation. So another piece of this is, how do you handle the unexpected conversation where you think, oh, I'm not ready for this. I can't believe what I just heard, you know, that kind of startled feeling. And you have to make space for yourself. And there are a couple ways to do it. In mediation, if I hear something, I like to drop something on the ground. And just the time it takes me to pick that up off the floor, get my pen back, I can put my game face on. So sometimes it's really short. Other times you might have to say to somebody, I want to have this conversation with you, but I can't do it right now. So set a time with them. Don't blow them off. Definitely set a time to come back and have that conversation, but give yourself time to think about it and give yourself the space. And the other one is, I love the phrase, say more. I'm not sure I'm following you. Could you please say more? And two things happen. First, it gives you time to get your thoughts in order and to get your frame of mind opened. It's not you collecting your counter argument. It's you opening your mind up for this conversation. And the other thing it does is, sometimes when they're saying more and they're explaining their thoughts, you realize you didn't understand them initially, or you realize there's more nuance than you thought. So those are both really good tips. The other one to do is to voice your discomfort out loud. So let's say you're in a mediation or in a circle, and the two participants are using really strong language, and they're agitated and things are getting heated. You might be uncomfortable, and you might be tempted to say, hey, you know, we had norms you're supposed to follow. You can't use this language. What are you doing? But the truth is, they might not be uncomfortable. So a different way to phrase it would be, can we stop for a minute? I'm struggling. We agreed in the norms not to swear. There's a lot of swearing happening. But you two seem okay with it. Am I reading this right? And if they say, we're great, okay, you have to manage that discomfort, but they're balanced and they're even and they can keep going. If one of them says, yeah, I don't like the swearing either, then you can refer back to the norms. But don't take your discomfort and try to control their behavior, if that makes sense. So now we're going to use the chat for a second. And the reason, so the chat doesn't get recorded in the video, so these won't be captured that way. But anyhow, so if you could put in the chat, why are you doing circles? Why are you involved in this practice? And I'll read some of them out just so you know, but I mean, I'm not going to read your name attached to it. So here's a nice one. Love the healing that can take place. It's nice. Oh, here's a good one. I haven't been doing circles because they make me feel uncomfortable. to make a difference in folks' lives, to build community, make the world kinder and more accepting, give people an alternative to vengeance and incarceration. Those are all really good. I don't do circles much either. I see aspects of myself and my world I have yet to embrace. I think and hope that people just need to be heard. I think it's wonderful. I know for me, I do this work just in general throughout my life, because I know that when I other people, if you know what I mean by that, so if I deny someone their capacity, if I deny them their agency, if I disparage them, every time I do that, which I think is a human impulse, I lose my humanity. So I can't control anybody else's process, but I can try to hold on to my own humanity. So the other thing to think about in terms of your bias, I like to think about my biases as baggage. So I have a little wheelie bag that goes with me. So when I walk into a mediation room, I'm bringing two things into that room. I have my wheelie bag full of my biases, which I have to be aware of because they could set off some false alarms that I don't want. I want to be aware of them. And then I also have my toolkit. So I'd like some of you to put down in the chat some of the biases that you're aware of that you're struggling with. And when I say struggling, we're always struggling with our biases, right? I mean, I think it's an ongoing process. There's no point when you say, I can just leave the suitcase behind. I don't need to carry it anymore. I mean, the reality is it's part of being human. So let's look in the chat and see what we've got going there. I've got to get back to exiting full screen so I can read the chat. All right.
And people are more comfortable, they can private message their biases. And some folks.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea too. Sure. So here's a good one, conflict averse. Good to know that.
I have one here, against men.
Okay.
It's a good one to know.
Yeah. Yep. One has a political bias. Yep, for sure. It's a one right now that a lot of people are struggling with on both sides, right? So then I want you to think, so you've got your suitcase with your biases in them. Now, what's in your toolkit? Put down a couple of your strengths. And the wonderful thing is we don't all have the same toolkit. So isn't that great? Got a whole variety of strengths. But go ahead and put down something you think, okay, here's a nice one, introspection, calmness, value for intelligence, listening with intent. I think we're getting a couple, I think we're mixing our two categories together, but that's okay. Listening, curiosity, a regional bias, okay. Can listen if I stop, like it with the acronym. Honest self-awareness, that's great. So one of my strengths, I think, is I am very conflict tolerant. I have a very high tolerance for conflict. I see conflict as productive. And I'm very task-oriented with conflict. It's not personal. We're staying on the task. But the downside to that, the thing that's a weakness for me, is if someone is starting to shut down, it's very hard for me to figure that out. So in mediation, when somebody's getting quiet and they're shutting down, that is a cue for me to caucus with that person right away, because I need to find out what's going on with them. And so to be aware of that. So those are great. So thanks for sharing all of that in the chat. And in going forward, you know, if you know your toolkit and you know what's in your little rollabout suitcase, it really helps you find out what your skill set is and where to apply it and how best to use those skills. So I think that's helpful. It can also help you find out who to mediate with. You know, somebody who has a slightly different toolkit from you. You know, that can be a good pairing. And the last thing I want to say is, if you can just think about relaxing your body and setting down the need to control what other people are doing, setting aside the need to be vindicated and validated and to win. And if you cannot look for the truth, because there's always more than one truth in the room, life gets really interesting in surprising ways, because suddenly you're open to truly hearing what's going on with the other person. And so again, thanks for joining us. And now Carolyn is going to talk about, oh, I'm sorry. Carolyn, Layla, did you have anything to add? Sorry.
I'm going to just throw in a couple of sentences about the bottom of this list here, and we're going to go into some of this more in a couple minutes. But just that the phrase "build bridges" is, I think, really key in terms of what we're about here, which is thinking about how to connect with somebody, as opposed to how to argue with them or how to convince them. It doesn't mean that, as the last one says, it doesn't mean that you agree with them. And the fact that you are choosing not to say, something to somebody who makes some kind of statement, say they make a statement about how we just really need to keep all the immigrants out of the country, and that raises statements that we disagree with, raise our hackles, make us want to react. And Jennifer gave you a couple of good tools for how to not go right to the reaction. But the part of maybe the overarching tool that we want to give you today is the idea of thinking about what you're trying to do in a different way. So you're trying to find a way to open your heart to the other person. You're trying to be empathic even with somebody who says something that you find really outrageous, and you want to have some tools to disagree, to be able to state that you don't agree with them without sounding like you're judging them at the same time. We're going to talk more about how you might go about doing that in just a minute. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Carolyn, who's going to get us started in talking about some of the skills that we are hoping to tell you about today. So here's.
Thank you. So talking about skills, for me, practicing skills is imperative. It's something that you have to continuously work on. You don't ever get to say, I'm a master at this skill, because once you've mastered it, you still have to practice it, and there's always things to learn. And when we talk about our biases and our mindset, those are things that are very deep inside of us, and they're difficult to work through. So for me, having these skills and practicing them and keeping the practice of the skills is a way for me to help manage the biases that I have. So, for example, when we look at, I'm going to look at the open-ended questions first. So looking at open-ended questions, right, that's a really great way to prevent your own biases from entering the questions that you ask. And we have a video here where you'll get to listen to a bunch of different types of questions. The first set are going to be open-ended questions, and so you'll get to hear what those sound like. And then you'll start to hear what closed-ended questions sound like, what leading questions sound like. And you'll be able to see how they're going to expect and get a different answer depending on how the question is asked. And I want you to also listen for the biases that people are placing in the questions towards the end of the video.
Okay, so we'll just take a second to stop this share and to get the video up.
And I will share that one of my biases was that I've worked on for a long time. When I grew up overseas, and with the exception of my father, the only Americans that I knew were the ones who were very religious and trying to share their religion overseas. So for a very long time, I had a bias against Americans. And so that is something that, of course, living here, I've come to realize that's not true. But it was something I had to work on in order to really be able to listen and understand the people I was working with here.
Okay, so go ahead. This hearing.
What do you think of the new office?
What are you doing this weekend?
How are you getting on with that report?
When would you like to go for lunch?
What did you think of the restaurant?
Those are open-ended.
What did you think of the match last night?
What's the latest news about your car?
So, what's going to happen next with you and Jake? Do you like the new office?
Are you going to Barry's party this weekend?
Have you done that report yet?
Shall we go for lunch now?
Was the restaurant good?
Did you see the match last night?
Has your car been fixed?
Are you going to see Jake again? Don't you think the new office is really nice?
You're not going to Barry's party, are you?
Haven't you done that report yet?
Shall we go for lunch now? I'm starving.
So, wasn't that restaurant just the best?
Did you see the match last night?
Has your car not been fixed yet?
You are going to see Jake again, aren't you? What do you think of the new office then? Do you think it will be better working here? Do you think we should have moved from the old building? I'm not sure. What do you think?
What are you doing at the weekend? I know you've been invited to Barry's, but do you really want to go? Mind you, the weather's supposed to be good, so maybe you just want to chill out in the garden? Or you could chill out in the garden and go to Barry's later on.
How are you getting on with that report? I really need it today, but how's it fitting in with the rest of your schedule? I mean, can you make it a priority? It's just if I had to tell Joan that it's going to be late, I'd rather do that now, so what do you think?
When would you like to go for lunch? We could go now. It's a bit early, but the queue won't be very long and there might be more choice. Oh, but maybe you prefer to go later. But I must admit, I'm starving. So should we just go now? Or later? Or not?
Okay, so hopefully you saw the
Hey,
difference.
we just go back and listen to the open ones again for just a second.
Yeah.
Compare now.
What do you think of the new office?
What are you doing this weekend?
How are you getting on with that report?
When would you like to go for lunch?
What did you think of the restaurant?
What did you think of the match last night?
What's the latest news about your car?
So, what's going to happen next with you and Jake?
Okay.
Thank you. And I put a link to that video in the chat in case you want to check it out later and listen to it again. It can be really helpful to hear different ways of how a question can be closed or open when you're asking the same thing. And these are really good skills to use in circles too, right? You want to be able to ask participants open-ended questions so that you're not letting your bias lead what you expect the answer to be. And this works for all sorts of conversations. So looking then at the feelings, values, and topics, right? these are, for me, this is the basis of any reflection that I'm going to give a person. Could we go to the next slide real quick, just the one where it has like the feelings wheel? Yeah. So I'm not going to go too in depth with this because there's already, I did a presentation on that a while ago, and you can watch that video once it's up. But the main pieces that I want to focus on here are being able to use a variety of different words when it comes to feelings and values. I've put here the feelings wheel, and I'll put the link in the comments in a little bit. But this particular wheel is a really nice way of breaking out what feelings are. So you may feel angry, but underneath that there's a lot more going on. You're not just angry, you're feeling left out, or you're feeling ignored, or something else is going on. And so this can really help you parse out what the feelings are and help you use more precise language when you're reflecting to other people. Something else that's really important here is that when you have a topic, you want to make sure that your topics aren't just a value. And this is important when you're talking, especially with people that you have a different background from. Because when you have a value as a topic, that is automatically going to have your own biases in there. So make sure that when you're identifying a topic of a conversation, it's something concrete. It's something both of you would agree is the name of that topic, right? So trash might not be the topic, because if it's an art project, let's say you have stuff all over the room, I would call it my art supplies, my roommate would call it trash. In this case, the topic should really be shared space, because you're talking about the living room, right? So make sure that when you're identifying those topics, that it's something that is just that concrete and both of you would agree to. And even if you don't actually say the topic out loud with the other person, by doing this mentally, it can help you really take your bias out of what it is that you're talking about. So, for example, we might be talking about immigration, and for me, we're talking about kids in cages, right? But that's not the topic that the other person is talking about. They're talking about people, they're talking about their fear of people coming here. And so those are feelings and values around what the actual topic is, which may just be immigration. When you do a reflection, the perfect reflection is going to have a feeling, a value, and a topic all bundled in one. That almost never happens in real life, right? Normally, if you can just pull out one feeling or one value, that's enough to help the other person feel heard and continue to move the conversation forward. But what I have down here is an example. When you're reflecting to someone, it might be something like, it sounds like you're feeling angry, and honesty is really important to you when it comes to communication. Is that right? Notice at the end there is a question. Is that right? Or did I capture that? Or did I hear you well? When you're reflecting to someone else, it's very important to make sure that you are saying it as a question, because you don't know what they're feeling. Even if you've gone through the exact same thing they have and the exact same circumstances, you're still a different person. And so you still want to phrase your reflection as a question to them. Now, what's wonderful about using the feelings, values, and topics is you can also apply this to yourself and your own feelings, right, and your own values. So you can say, value is important to me when it comes to topic, and I feel this about it, something like that. And that's another way for you to use that I language while also helping, being clear about what it is that your value is in this situation, what you're talking about. So you're not just telling them they're wrong. You're saying, this is where I'm coming from and this is how I feel. Those can be statements. Okay, now we can go back. And I think I will now pass it on to you, Layla.
Okay, so I am going to see if I can add a little bit to some of these tools that Carolyn's been talking about, particularly using a method that's called CLARA. And you can see what it stands for: calm and center, listen, affirm or find common ground. And then I've got in parentheses, respond and add. because those are not the skills that we are particularly wanting to focus on today. Today we're really focusing on the CLA part of Clara, and sometimes we talk about that, which is after you calm and center yourself. What you want to do is la la la, as opposed to rah rah rah, trying to get somebody to your point of view. So I'm wondering if I could just ask some of you to put in the chat, what are some of your favorite ways to calm yourself, to center yourself, to do something quick that just gets you, especially if somebody says something and you just want to rise up in response. What do you do? And I'll ask Carolyn to read those out since I can't easily see them.
Observe my breath. Take a breath. Take a deep breath. I will sometimes roll my eyes up, and that doesn't work very well for me because then people think I'm rolling my eyes at them.
Yeah, there's a value judgment associated with that. So are there any more, or shall I? So taking a
deep breath, similar things.
Okay, taking a breath. Most of us have done that, know that, so you can just do that right now. Here's another one. This is one that you can do whether you're standing or sitting, and it really doesn't matter whether you're able to accomplish it. It's just about the fact that you are trying to do it. So somebody has just said something that you find quite objectionable. Something I've heard somebody say recently, actually, on the governor of a particular state was, well, we don't need to wear masks anymore. So rather than kind of want to rise up and say my piece about that, I am going to focus on my toes, and I'm going to just try to lift one of my big toes off the ground and put it down. Like I said, doesn't matter whether you can do it. Just then try and lift a little toe off the ground, put it back down. Just the fact of taking your attention away and putting it somewhere else gives you a few seconds. Jennifer mentioned dropping a piece of paper. That's a good one too. If you're standing, just bending at the knees a little tiny bit, or feeling you can do the sitting, the one with your shoulders you can do sitting. So just right now, feel like you can let your shoulders drop, even if it's just like 1/10 of an inch. Just let your shoulders drop a little bit. Anything like that that gives you a chance to back off from whatever your initial response is really helpful. And again, when you're in the heat of the moment, it's hard to do this. And so that's partly why we encourage you to practice. And you can practice taking a breath, dropping your shoulders, wiggling your toes when you're not tense, when you're not about, in a difficult situation. The second part of Clara has to do with listening, and the listening is not just for what's going on, what the person is saying. The listening is to try to hear some of the things Carolyn was talking about, the feelings and the values. But you might hear in somebody's voice tone that they seem kind of scared or shaky or anxious, or and you don't even have to identify the feeling as much as just say, wow, it sounds like this is kind of hard for you to talk about, or anything like that. And again, with a questioning kind of tone, so that people will tell you. If you say to somebody, it sounds like you're really mad, and they're not, they'll tell you. So in some ways, it doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong. The point is that you are listening to what they are saying and what they're not saying, and asking a question or trying to draw them out about what might be going on for them. And as you're doing that kind of deeper listening, the goal is to try to find something that's common ground for the two of you. Now, if somebody, says, something that you find very offensive, it doesn't mean you have to just pretend that they didn't say it. So, you know, somebody says, well, you know, all black people should be on welfare, or, you know, or just trying to scam the welfare system, or I don't know. Somebody might say something like that, and you know, it's really hard to not just jump. But think about a statement you could make that would disagree calmly. So I'll tell you a few of mine, and you can think of, if you have one or two that you can think of, you can put them in chat. We can read them. But so I might just say, you know, you and I really don't see eye to eye on that. But I'm just curious. It sounds like you're worried that maybe there's not going to be, you know, enough money for things that you and your family need. Is that what's going on here? So I might say, you know, you and I are probably just never going to see eye to eye on that one. And it sounds like you're feeling kind of worried. So I'm disagreeing and then going on with looking for common ground. I just heard another trainer that I work with recently just said that what she does is she says, well, you know, I have some thoughts about that, but let me find out more about what's going on with you. Can you say more, as Jennifer suggested? Can you say more about how you know, what that seems like to you? You know, or it might be something where you can find a common ground around family, or around, well, you know, I want my family to be safe too. That's really important to me. I can understand why you are concerned. So, and I will say right up front, this is not easy, especially when you're talking to somebody that you disagree with. And another one of my co-training partners talks about a neighbor who was saying quite offensive things about people of color for over a period of time, of months. And my partner just basically changed the subject, and you know, they talked about the weather, they talked about their dogs, whatever. Eventually that person, she was then able to say, you know, that just doesn't, it's not the way I think about that at all. And the neighbor came back and said, yeah, I guess I'm being racist again, aren't I? It's like the neighbor had space and a relationship had been developed so that they then, this woman could then self-disclose and really look at her own behavior. But the point is trying to find a connection, a way to connect with another person without, you know, denying your own truth, but not necessarily making that the center point of what you're trying to do. So anything either of you want to add, Carolyn or Jennifer, or are we ready to move on to our role plays?
I would just add really quickly, think about how you start conversations with people as well, you know, the open-ended question. So rather than saying to somebody, well, what do you do, you know, if you're at a party, what do you do for a living? Some people don't want to talk about what they do for a living, right? And we forget that. So saying things like, you know, what are you excited about? What gets you up every day? Like, what motivates you? That's a much better way to find out where that person's passions are and to make that relationship connection with them. And then, as Layla said, this is an ongoing practice, because when you're in the middle of a conflict, that's not the time to go, what is my centering technique? Uh-oh, you know. So, you know, it can be a piece of music that you have in your head, or it has to be something that you can grab onto quickly that then calms your whole body. And then I know for me, the thing I carry whenever I hear something that's going to get me fired up, I remind myself that righteousness feels so good. There's a place for righteousness. But if I'm righteous and I'm not compassionate toward the other person, then I'm just scornful. So then I go back to the fact that, do I really want to be dwelling in a place of scorn? So find the quick cue that'll get you to that place of calm quickly, so it's ready. It's on deck for you. So
I have a question for Carolyn. When you talk about feelings, values, that you want to make sure that you got it right, um, I noticed that your questions are yes and no questions rather than open-ended. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's true. That's true. It's a very good point. The very last question where I say, did I get that right or is that right, is a closed-ended question. And that's fine because you want to know the yes or no there.
Okay.
But like Layla was saying, you can use a questioning tone too, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be a question. As long as it's clear that when you're saying it, you're questioning and not stating that this is how they feel. Then it's,
You could also say, how does that sound to you? Or something like that. That would be more
yeah,
open-ended.
that would be wonderful.
Okay.
And I wanted to add one more thing when it comes to all of this around understanding our own mindset, using the skills, all of this. The majority of us here are white. And I think that as such, it's important that we really practice these skills with folks who may be saying things that are racist or maybe speaking about things that will hurt those of the people in our community who don't have as much power. And I think that it's really important for us to really dig deep into our discomfort and face our discomforts so that we can have these difficult conversations and make the world a little bit of a safer place for folks who don't have as much power as those with lighter skin. Thanks.
And I'll just throw in that the last two pieces of Clara, the respond and add, it's not that you never get there, you do get there. And you may not get there every conversation. But there's a place for you to say, well, you know, I have this information that I think might help you understand this from a different point of view. And you share whatever your point of view is. We're just trying to emphasize in this particular workshop the idea of trying to connect and find common ground and see the humanity in the other person, even when they're saying something that you find really objectionable, so that we can get past the objection to be able to actually have some real communication. One of the things that research has shown is that trying to convince somebody that you're right and they're wrong almost never works. It almost always makes the other person dig their heels in and solidify their position, as opposed to hearing how wonderfully wise your position is. So that's why we try to create this connection and relationship first, because then you have some basis on which somebody might actually listen to a different point of view. Okay, so here's some of the tools. We don't have every single one sitting up there in the box, but what we'd like to do now, we hope some of you are willing to step forward and try on playing with some of this. We have 4 different role plays. We don't know that we'll get through all 4 of them. Each one of them has a little backstory for the 2 participants who are going to be having the conflict, and then there's a facilitator role for what would be somebody, one of the circle keepers, one of you, who would be in this situation and would be wanting to use some of these tools to see if you can step in and keep a conflict from escalating. So if you are willing to be a participant, if you would so indicate in the chat, you can just chat to everybody, or chat to Carolyn or Jennifer.
Actually, would maybe just chat to everyone would be easiest, just so
because we're going to do this
3 chat streams. Yeah. So one thing we weren't sure about is usually when you do circles, I believe you have a partner, correct? So in some cases, if 2 people want to be a facilitator, you want a co-facilitator, that's fine. And then the other piece we want to say is that we're going to role play in fishbowls. So that means that everybody who's watching the fishbowl has an opportunity to silently be a facilitator as well, to think about the things that you see and that you note and that you might add or that you appreciated that you saw, so that we'll do a little feedback session at the end.
And it is our plan to stay in the large group and do this, as opposed to going into breakout rooms. So we'll have a lot of observers. So
I put in the chat just that we need 2 participants and 1 or 2 facilitators to volunteer.
And in the meantime, we can all practice our calming and centering.
Our first subject is vaccines. So there, if you think you can role play one side of that or the other, pop your name in the chat.
I'll just put that up and you can read. This is the situation.
We have 1 co-facilitator. Thank you, Ruth.
Carolyn, are you going to send the links or?
Yes, I'll send them.
Okay, just checking. Thanks.
So Ruth, I'm sending you right now your instructions as co-facilitator. It's a link, so let me know if you're able to open that or not able to open that.
Looks like Kathy and Craig are willing to be participants, as is Phyllis. Kathy says she'll play any part, so maybe Kathy could be a co-facilitator.
Perfect.
That sound.
Okay, so Kathy, I will also send you the link. Oh, if I can get my thing to work.
So
Carolyn did a great job of trying to streamline how we get you these scripts. It's more complicated on Zoom. We can't just hand you a piece of paper and give you space to read your role.
Yeah, each person receiving a little backstory that they can use to help play their role. And when we're ready, I'll stop the screen share so we can all watch the action.
The other tip is, if you are role playing and you're one of the participants, you can go up and you can actually make it so that you cannot see your self view. So, you know, sometimes you might be role playing. I recently was in a mediation role play and I had to be a millennial. Well, I'm clearly not a millennial, so it helped to not have to see my what am I, Gen Y, Gen X? I don't know. Anyway, I could get more into character if I didn't have to see my own face.
All right. Do we think we have all our participants?
I think that the bar on the right side, Layla, is making it difficult for people to read the end of the paragraph there. It might be the videos of people.
Oh, you guys are seeing that, huh?
We just see a bar. There we go. Thank you.
No problem.
So maybe we should stop screen sharing during the fishbowl.
Craig, Phyllis, were you able to open those links and read those?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So
The people who are in the role play could unmute. Is that Phyllis and Craig and Joan? So anybody else? Is that the 3?
So
Circle keepers, Kathy and me.
right, Ruth and Kathy, and then if everyone else, if you're not on mute already, if you could just put yourself on mute, that'll help too.
Oh, okay.
Craig and Phyllis, I think, are the participants.
Okay, so whoever is I don't know who's which roles, but whoever is being the facilitator, think for a moment about a couple of the tools that you might want to be using as this gets started.
And for the rest of the folks, if you click on your screen and click on View in the top right corner and switch to Speaker View, that might help you, because then just the people who are speaking will show up and it'll be easier to keep track of who's talking.
Actually, Carolyn, if you want to, if you know how to use the spotlight feature, you can actually spotlight, I think, maybe up to four of us at once. And just
I will try that.
I know it works for at least 2.
Okay, I'll try that.
I've had trouble the last couple of days. I don't know what's going on with my computer and or the Zoom with me, and I just disappeared. I had to go out, come back in. So if we have two other participants, it might be better for me not to do this. I'm sorry.
So Phyllis, how about if we substitute, if Aaron picks up your spot, and then if you can figure it out, we can jump you in on another role play. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm going to assume that, unless you want us to do this differently, that we're not going to go through the beginning of a circle, which is used to establish an esprit de corps kind of thing. We're just going to launch into the problem. Is that how you want us to do it?
That would be great.
And
Yeah.
also, remember, you're not trying to get to the solutions phase. You're just trying to practice the skills of reflecting and calming and centering and all of that.
Yeah.
So normally, Ruth and I would probably talk separately first and come up with some questions too to. But,
Right.
That's
I thought, Kathy, maybe we'd start with the round of what can you tell us about what brings us here today? Something like that.
okay, and don't we participate as members too of the circle?
Yeah, and we have to establish the
Order?
the order.
Well, it's probably a facilitator, a participant, a facilitator, and another participant, I guess. We usually go kind of opposite each other, I think, but maybe I'm wrong.
So we just have two participants, is that right?
Right. So.
Okay. So you guys, have you decided which of you is the pro-vax and the anti-vax?
Yep, we were given those roles.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
All right, I didn't get that right. Maybe I missed it.
Oh, I can send it again.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I've got it. It's a lot to read.
You got it? Oh, good. Okay, so that's okay.
Ruth, do you want to start?
Okay. What would you tell us here in our circle about what brings us here today? What do you understand about it?
And who's next?
And Craig, you're next.
Okay. Well, I guess we're here because Aaron doesn't get how important vaccination is to this world, this country, our community, and to me and my family. I've been waiting for a while now. I've seen other people get vaccinated, and I was waiting, and I finally got mine. I'm all done. My wife is still waiting to get an offer to get vaccinated to allow our lives to get a little bit closer back to normal and reduce the risk of us infecting other people like Aaron. I don't get what her issue is.
Okay. Well, vaccination is certainly an important issue at this time. We've been living with a pandemic for a year, and vaccines seem to offer some possibility of I try to say this without getting my feelings into it. Vaccines are here now, and many people are able to take a vaccine, and I understand that it's very important to you to have one, and that you feel that it's important for other people to have it too. Erin, let's hear what you think about the issue of getting vaccinated.
Well, I think that we're here because we're neighbors, and that Craig and I are neighbors, and that we live in a community where we have to be willing to accept that we don't all agree, and that we're living in a time where information about the vaccine has often been not accurate. And when we need it and how we need it and if we wear masks and if we don't mask, it keeps changing every day. I've been reading a lot of the research. There are people who've had some really severe reactions. There's now lots of mutations. It's just not that clear. I'm hearing as neighbors, that it's really clear to him and that he needs me and my family and everybody in my neighborhood to get the vaccine. And I'm sorry, but I'm not willing, after now almost exactly a year of living with this, to pick up his urgency until I'm absolutely certain that getting this vaccine and the company that is putting it out, and that the research that's been done and the reactions that are having, saying that it's the safest thing for me and my family. And so it is about the vaccine, but it's also about how are we responding to being neighbors and being in a world that's so filled with uncertainty.
Okay, you both clearly have feelings about the vaccine. And also, I am hearing that we're here because you both value your health and the health of your families. And you want to act in a way that you feel gives you the most safety, and particularly because your neighbors and other of your neighbors care about you and how you're getting along. So I think we're here because you're feeling like your community is having a little bit of trouble staying together. And but I hear you sharing a value, and that is your health and safety and that of your family. So I'm wondering, how deeply do you feel about your health and safety?
Ruth?
Yeah.
I think maybe a better question might be, how do they feel about neighbors and keeping the community with disagreement maybe, or whether it's possible to continue disagreement with neighborliness? I'm just saying that because everyone feels deeply about their health.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe we could go talk about neighborliness and agreement and disagreement maybe.
Good. That's good. You want to start the round?
Okay. Let's, Aaron, you talked a lot about neighborliness, and I'd like to explore that a little bit. So you're both neighbors. Right now you seem to have a disagreement, which affects, whether someone gets a vaccine or doesn't get a vaccine, or whether they wear a mask or doesn't wear a mask, does affect their neighbors. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, whether everyone has to do the same thing, think the same thing, but how important is neighborliness compared to maybe some of the other issues that we're talking about today. So if we continue on with this, well, I guess let's do Craig next, and then Ruth. We'll go around the other way because we haven't heard from Craig for a while. So I pass the talking piece to you, Craig.
Thank you. Yeah, neighborliness. Yeah, we've lived by each other for a while now, and I value Aaron as a neighbor. We've had good chats. We've shared parts of our lives, and I know it's nice to know there's somebody reliable next door, and and that's, I guess, one reason I was so surprised when I got this anti-vaxxer sort of response from her, when I was just trying to express my excitement about finally getting this done for myself. And I admit I was upset when I heard that she had been offered a chance to get a vaccine and not only didn't take it up. I mean, I respect people's reasoning about putting off, wanting to be more careful, and this vaccine thing was definitely pushed fast through the system, and maybe there are some issues there, maybe not, but I was just surprised that she not only didn't take the opportunity to get the vaccine. That's fine, basically. I mean, I have to accept that. People have that right, I guess. But I understand she didn't even cancel the appointment, so it just makes it hard for other people to get their vaccine if you don't let the schedulers know that there's an open slot there. So that was just one thing that pissed me off. Anyway, other than that, I mean, I respect Erin, and obviously she thinks about what is the right thing to do for herself and her family and this community, and we're coming at it a little differently. I don't know, maybe, yeah, that's all for the moment. Yeah.
I think I'm hearing that the two of you have been able in the past to share a good, over the fence neighborliness, and now that's being really challenged by how you express your differences on the issue of vaccination. And I'm just wondering if you've had other disagreements in the past, or is this the first time it's come up? But that can just be another part of your response, Erin, to Craig's observations about your neighborliness.
Well, I have to be honest. I'm really kind of, as he said, he was surprised. I'm really upset. I was really pissed because I just felt like he just came at me, and he got his voice raised, and he got full of passion and all kinds of stuff. I mean, we've all been kind of like groundhogs for the last 6 or 8 months here, and then I see him for the first time, and I felt like he was attacking me, that a system that let me know less than a day before that I had to be here with so-and-so and didn't give me the information that I needed, and so-and-so after, hearing and reading, and this is not an abstract thing for me. This isn't just out there. I've had folks die of COVID. I have my oldest son who has had heart failure and a stroke because of COVID. And he doesn't know these things because we've been groundhogs all year. And so when he started basically saying that I was making his family and the neighborhood unsafe, I basically raised my voice back and said, that wasn't fair. That wasn't just, that he was attacking me. And what I think is really, 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 really important is that all the neighbors came out and that this got on the neighborhood email and everything, because we're not all the same. I mean, we live in a complex neighborhood with lots and lots of people, and not everybody sees it the same. And we're red and blue, and we're multicolored and multi-ethnic and multi-ageist and multi-everything. And I think the fact that we were letting ourselves have our passionate emotions out there in public, really, maybe after being so quiet, shocked people. But I think the volume and the way in which it happened is a response. And I'm sure I'll get to the point where I'll apologize and everything, but I felt like it was just the truth, that this is what we've all been sitting on and holding on and whatever, and that there isn't a right answer, and there isn't whatever. And no, I could not get to that shot. And he just really, how did I not give that shot away to somebody else? And it was just like, whoa, I didn't cause this. I didn't make it. I didn't, whatever. And so we really came to a place where I think we were just so, it just really hurts. And I hear for both of us that we're just really trying to find a way back to another place. And that's why we were willing to come, because we just had a lot of stuff.
All right, time. We're going to stop the role play at this point. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate how much you got into the roles and really expressed yourselves, all of you. It was great. And what we'd like to do is just give a few minutes for anybody and everybody in the room that would like to. You can put response in chat, or you can unmute and share I think I'm just going to try and see if it's too chaotic, then I can call on people. But if we'll just try and see if we can take a few comments here from whoever would like. What did you see as observers that you thought worked well? What did you see that people, and we'd like to, if you have something to share that could be an opportunity for change or improvement, try to point out something that worked well first and then point out what you would like to share.
And Layla, I was wondering if we could hear from the folks who did the circle also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if for those of you who just did the circle, great role playing, by the way. Wow, terrific. How did it feel? How did it feel, especially, you know, as a facilitator, having two people in conflict? You know, did you feel pressure to get this resolved, or did you feel calm and centered? You know, what was your body telling you?
Well, I was glad, as I always am, that there's a co-facilitator with me, because Kathy, your redirection on the question was useful. And my body, well, I have a pretty high tolerance for conflict too, so I was waiting for the anger to come out and relieved that it finally started showing up.
And as a co-facilitator, I was sorry about the way that I redirected. I think it sounded a little critical of Ruth, but in a real situation, we maybe would have talked more ahead of time, and I couldn't direct message her either, so maybe I didn't word it exactly best, but yeah.
Well, Kathy, I'd like to say that you provided us with a really good kind of living example of how you start out with a question that has some built-in biases and then shift the language, right? You know, at the beginning, so okay, oops, I'm expressing bias here. How do I stop doing that? That was you know, that was just, I couldn't have asked for a better example of what it is we're trying to have everybody kind of learn and think about here. So thank you.
And I do think we all know that in the middle of a circle, you wouldn't have said, "Hey, Ruth," you know, let's reframe that. You know, so
Right.
You're always in and out of the role play, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes we let those less desirable questions go the circle, and then we get around to the next one that's more useful.
Right.
Yeah.
And I would say also that the way that you caught yourself and changed your own question, I think that doing that in a circle is perfectly fine too, because it allows people to see that you can catch yourself and you can correct yourself, and that's totally normal, and it's okay to do that. So it also provides a pattern that other people can follow in the future.
It's always valid to say, "Oh, wait, let me reframe that."
Mm-hmm.
You know, so so the other thing to think about in this scenario is sometimes, and I'm curious for our facilitators, because both Craig and Erin did a great job of bringing emotion. I think you both captured the neighborliness as the connection, as the common ground. But sometimes I think we find that we have a bias. Maybe we're more sympathetic to one person's position over another. And if we know ahead of time what the case is about, and we know it's something where we're going to have trouble being neutral, we can say, "I can't do that one," you know. But sometimes you get surprised. So did either of you have a feeling about this particular issue? And I know you were working to not show that bias, which was great. But I'm just asking, in your heads as you were doing it, did you find a bias more toward one person than the other? And did that bias change in your body as the conversation continued and you learned more?
I had a bias going in. I don't know that it changed. You know, I think people should get vaccinated, and I've had these, you know, these arguments, these discussions with other people already. So,
well, you did a great job of not letting that show. Congratulations. Yeah. So, how about you, Ruth?
I have a bias, but I have to say that I you know, when I expressed the common ground they had about the value of their health and the health of their families, that I did because I think that that's the bottom line. And so I know that, for instance, the woman who cleans for us is not going to get a vaccine, and she's never gotten any vaccine. So I just let that go. And I think that I know it has to do with her her sense of safety and health. And that's her bottom line, and that's my bottom line too. So I just let it go when you don't want a vaccine. So I would say I have a slight bias toward one, but not fully.
I see Carolyn unmuted. You would like to jump in?
No.
Yeah, is it okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am very biased towards, the vaccine. I was surprised at myself that the passion from Erin, is that how you say your name? Yeah, about her, it affected me in a positive way. I mean, well, I don't know positive, but I mean, I haven't changed my mind, but the appreciation and the respect I have, I don't always feel that I get that. And I think that's the discussion, that seeing the discussion of it was so helpful. Just wanted to say that.
Other people would like to comment on what they experienced, what they saw, what they thought worked well or could be improved? Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
Yeah, I wanted to say that I really appreciated hearing the other side of the argument. And I think that that's something that's easy for me, who is biased for the vaccine, to really hear that other side. And once you really listen to it, it enables you to get into that mindset. But I really also thought it was great for Kathy to find the neighborliness, because I think that was the value that they could probably work from that point. So I thought that was right on in terms of a direction.
Yeah. Joan?
I appreciated the round introduced to talk about experiences of neighborliness, or at least to introduce them both to think about that. We had a similar disagreement on our neighborhood email and directed it to what good neighbors, how we value these neighbors who are at each other's throats. And one of them really came back with, yeah, the value of the neighborhood is so great. I mean, I think introducing with a round of, tell us a story about a time when you two experienced the value you have as neighbors can help to enrich that question as well.
Mm-hmm. Other comments? Erin, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I live in Ypsilanti, and this is not an abstract conversation. And I think I also am very familiar with Laura, that goes way back before Clara, for years and years and years. And that part of that for me, and even speaking, is where is the common ground? And the vaccine's going to come and go. But there's a piece of this that's under all of that. And that was the piece when Kathy was able to pick up on that we went around. That then allowed some of the intensity of the emotion, I think, to come out. So that just seemed really important to me, that finding that common ground, even in the very, very beginning, that's below the moment or that underpins, just seemed really valuable. So I appreciate that.
I'll just add that I think Ruth also, when you brought forward the idea that they both care about their health, that was also a really good framing of common ground and what they each were saying. So that, I thought that was great too. And one thing you could have done with that, if you wanted to, is as after you said that, you say, I'm hearing that you both really care about your health. Is that accurate? And that would probably give them an opening to, again, talk more about their opinions. So, and Craig, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just as a participant, what got to me was finding out the missing information from Erin about her family and what she's gone through and the stuff that I did not know. I just wanted to say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it just, and that would really help with our connection.
And I think just a reminder, if you're doing this conversation not in a circle, but you've encountered the neighbor on the street, that's the value of the question. Can you say more? Right? So we want to make an assumption. So if it was just Craig and Erin on the street, assumptions are made and hackles go up, right? But when you can slow it down and say, can you say more? And then you do find out more and more information that really changes. You have a much better understanding of the person's position. So
I think the facilitators' willingness to look for common ground in the open-ended way they approach this really helped both people be able to express those things that helped broaden their point of view, their understanding of each other. So I guess I need to ask if we can do, we have 4 of these. I don't think we have time for 4, but we certainly would have time for 1 more if we want to do that. So maybe, because I can see everybody square, can I just see show of hands? Do you think it would be helpful to do 1 more? Or have we had enough?
Can you
I'm seeing hands and nods. Okay. So let me hand it over to Jennifer. I'm gonna share screen for a minute here so you all can see the scenario. And now we need more participants, right?
Right. So we need to get 4 more people, or if somebody wants to be a solo circle keeper, that's okay too. So for those of you who have strong political leanings, this might be a fun role play for you. This is a shy group, or my chat's not working.
Encourage you to step up.
We can also show a different scenario and then see if that's preferred. What was another one we had?
Well,
we had an office conflict.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's show that one.
Everyone's tired of talking about the election, perhaps. I support that.
All right, there's the work one. So if you would be willing to participate in role play, please put that in the chat.
And I'll say, if people are not willing to take this amount of risk in this safe group, there's not much hope for us doing this in real life. So take that risk. Put that foot in the ring. Go for it.
We won't bite.
Okay, we have Joan's willing to facilitate. Who wants to co-facilitate with Joan?
Thank you, Joan.
Yes, thank you, Joan.
I've sent you the Circle Keeper guide for the role play. We need 1 more facilitator, and then the other 2 parts that we need are just participants, which are the easy parts, right? You get to just act out.
Let's just wait 1 more minute and see if we have a couple people that are willing to try this. And if not, we can just go to some closing thoughts.
Did you need someone, like, had volunteered, but then my dog was doing something, so I had to run away. Do you need someone still?
Yes.
We do.
Oh, I'll do whatever.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
We could do it with just one more person. We can have just, I mean, co-facilitators is great, but hopefully Joan would be willing to be on her own facilitator for this.
And if you want to do it and tell me not to include it in the video, just say so.
Can I see the role play again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll be one of them.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I think we'll be good to go.
And I'm sorry, who was it? Was that Carolyn Madden?
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to send you the link here in just a second.
And for the rest of us, I'm just going to leave this, look at this slide for a minute so we're remembering what it is we're looking for as we watch and listen. And okay, stop this share, and Carolyn, if you want to do that nice spotlighting, that worked really well.
My basic value for the circle is forgiveness. That applies to everyone who's watching this. We will make mistakes.
But you know the lovely thing about mistakes? We don't learn unless we make mistakes.
We can learn a lot by practicing, I think.
Yeah.
Carolyn, you have to put your video on for us to.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Spotlight you. Yeah. Thank you.
Who's the other person?
It's you and Mike.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay.
And then Joan is facilitating.
Can you spotlight Carolyn to get her into this?
Yep. Sorry, I'm trying to look in the list. There we go. There we go.
There. All right.
Well, Carolyn and Mike, so glad to have you here. It says Michael. I'd like to jump right into this today. I guess the first thing I'll ask is for fairly briefly, if each of you could tell me why we are here today, what it is you want to address, so we have some idea of what you're looking for in our circle work today. Carolyn, you're not muted, so I'll ask you to go first.
Okay. Well, we're working on this project, and it's very important. And I'm just finding it a challenge with my coworkers, and I realize it's having an effect, and I really do want to make sure we change the environment, that it's not, so the tension isn't there. But the project for me is paramount to get it done, and I guess I'm not feeling that people are on board, and I'm not sure why that is. So it's just been stressful for me as well, but I know that it's bringing stress to the workplace as well.
And your goal here today?
Well, to find out what's going on, why they don't see that this project is so important.
Thank you. And Michael?
Well, I mean, I kind of feel the opposite, the same. I mean, I put everything into this project. I work hard at it. I had some things going on that really got in the way. And Carolyn has no appreciation. In fact, she usually shows up late. And I've just been having a lot of problems. And it's been building up over time. And I just don't know what to do. close down communication. I mean, we got this done finally, but I just don't want to deal with her anymore.
I see. And I understand from our previous conversations that you've worked together on projects before. So I'd like to do a round, and I'll reverse the order. Michael, you'll go first. To talk about a time when you worked together on a project and you felt like it was valuable, that Carolyn's input for you and her participation with you was very helpful.
Well, I mean, Carolyn can be helpful. I mean, but it bothers me that she's so often late at things. So, yeah, I mean, she's smart and she has some good ideas, but a few things just get my craw.
Maybe you didn't, I mean, I just want to clarify what I'm asking each of you to talk about is an experience that you've had together, a specific time, not the generalizations.
Well,
that went well.
Yeah, I mean, around 3 months ago, we did work on a project, and Carolyn did provide a lot of creative ideas, and I think we worked on that particular time. I think we did really work well together. I did things I really felt like we did work pretty well.
Okay. That's all you have to say, so we'll move on to Carolyn. I mean, we're imagining the talking piece moving here to Carolyn.
So want to repeat what you...
Oh, tell us about a specific time when you and Michael, maybe other people, but you and Michael worked together on a project and you valued his participation. There's something he did that was helpful.
Yeah, and most times it's helpful. It's not that I didn't find his input this time helpful either. That wasn't the issue. So I have always found his input helpful. It's more a matter of the time frame. And I don't know, maybe we didn't have as many deadlines and other things. And so that's one of the differences that I'm seeing. Other times, maybe there's not as much pressure in terms of getting it done. But I have no complaints about his input when it's there. It's the timing.
Let's see. Michael, maybe you could reiterate for us what you heard Carolyn say, and then what are your comments about that?
I mean, I think Carolyn was saying that, you know, we can work well together, and she appreciates my input. But there's just other things that, in this particular project, that really bothered me.
And would you like to elaborate on what they were?
Well, okay, so this was a very important project to both of us, but especially but it was really important to me too, because I saw it as a way of really advancing my career in the office and the presentation. And on my way to work, I was coming and I came in, I grabbed some coffee, and I spilled coffee over my jacket. So there was this big stain, and there was nothing I could do about it. And Carolyn was running late this morning, and I just got so frustrated, and she saw that, and she didn't, you know, she saw I was upset about something, and I don't know, she just seemed to blow it off. She didn't recognize anything, and it just bothered me that she just didn't seem to care about what was going on, because this was unusual for me to be under so much pressure and acting this way.
I see. Carolyn, would you like to respond to that in any way?
Well, something I'm hearing that I'm not sure. Maybe it has to do with our own communication, that more things were going on for Michael this time. I don't know if that's true or not. And maybe I'm not aware that there are other things going on. I agree that I was taken up by this project and I felt a lot of pressure myself. So maybe it's not taking the time to appreciate, you know, the whole office, not just Michael's needs, but, and so I don't know, I'm not sure whether I'm hearing from Michael that there's more going on in his life and I'm just not paying attention to that, or it's just something I'm doing that in this particular one, because I agree, we usually get along quite well, little different styles sometimes, but, so you know, maybe more talking, not sure, I'd have to think about it.
Well, I appreciate your seeing that aspect of the situation and being open to sharing that with Michael. And Michael, do you see any way that you could have facilitated or in the future Carolyn's understanding of what your needs are, which perhaps, as you've said, you weren't letting her know in this situation? Or am I, maybe I'm hearing you wrong, so correct me.
No, well, maybe, I mean, I guess, I mean, I was really discombobulated when that happened. And I guess I thought it was obvious that there was a stain on my jacket, and I was kind of pissed that Carolyn didn't seem to notice it. But in the same time, I guess I could have told her, probably should have told her what was bothering me. That might have helped.
I'm going to call time because in interest of the ending the workshop on time. So just want to thank all three of you very much. Really appreciate you stepping forward and doing this and really getting into your roles. So let's go back to our gallery view, and if any of the three of you would like to say something about what it was like, and if I don't know, if you're in the role enough that you need to shake it off a little bit, feel free to do that. It's a role play. What was it like? What do you think? If you have comments, and then we'll hear from some other people too.
I'll be quick because I don't have much to say. I did not feel caught up, so I wasn't able to practice what we are here today to talk about. I wasn't really quite clear what the conflict had been, and was trying to have them clarify that for each other as well as for me. I'm done. I'm passing the stick to Carolyn.
Can I speak? I can't see myself here, yeah. So, yeah, I thought there's a little difference in what the role play was and what he said. I don't know that, you know, I mean, that could happen, obviously. Some people think it's differently. But I was surprised at myself that I was so offended when he said I didn't care, or I was like, whoa, not me. And Joan, I forget what your first, but it made me feel at ease right away. And I can't remember what you said, but whatever it was, it made me feel okay. I was in a safe space, even if he, you know, hated my guts. I was still okay in a safe space. So whatever you said, and I wish I could remember what your first comment was very good. I agree with Joan. After it's a little, I don't know what the role play was. I wasn't sure what we were, because what I read was a little different than what I felt he was saying. So I don't know, maybe it was a little, I don't know, but Michael can maybe say something.
Yeah, well, there's a role play real quickly. It was actually a broken nail, and somehow that didn't seem to motivate me quite the same as you know, so I changed the thing. I guess I just went in kind of not thinking about anyone else except me, and I wanted to, there was this need to have a place where I could just let out really what was bothering me. And so I appreciated being in a situation where that could happen. I guess my question is, after saying what was bothering me and after earlier making all these other accusations, Carolyn, how did you feel? Have we, I mean, I don't think we haven't completed the process in my sense, but I shouldn't put words in. I'm curious as to what you feel now in terms of your relationship with my character.
Yeah, I just I lost a little bit because I didn't I didn't think that I was in role play. I was late, but you were you told that I was late a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe that's okay. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I don't have a satisfied feeling at the end of it, but I did think we got to the point where we talked about some of the differences, and that would be the goal, I think, of this. I don't know, it just seemed that there was a lot more about my personality and the personality of not just you, but the staff that probably would need to be discussed. You know, my wanting everything done and some people not thinking it's the most important thing in their lives at the moment. So I don't know.
Yeah, this is clearly just a, sorry, excuse me, clearly just a little vignette and not a complete circle. We don't have time for that.
I think your feelings of frustration there really touch on how important it is to carve out a lot of time for these kinds of conversations, that you can't do them on the fly.
Right. Yeah, and I think this would have been a great one. So Joan, I love how you said, what did you hear? Can you say that back and respond? I mean, that was a wonderful tool. This is one where there was a little touch on the value. This dispute was basically a work value about time, about preparation and punctuality. And we had two people who approach it very differently. So Mike's character likes to get everything ready the night before. So wait, that's the wrong way. Sorry, Carolyn's character would have gotten everything ready the night before and then rolled in at 9 o'clock, which her character doesn't see as late. And Mike's character is the opposite, wants to get up into the office bright and early, way ahead of schedule, and have time to get everything together. So that was the underpinning of it. So it's Carolyn's process of what's the topic, what's the value, what's the feeling. So this would have been a great one with more time to just keep kind of, you were getting there, you guys are starting to burrow into it. And then Mike, in his defense, you know, his character was supposed to tear a nail off to the point of bleeding and need to go take time to find a salon to help fix that. So I guess you could have gone to the dry cleaner for your coat, but I think you were working your way toward the feelings behind it of professionalism and compassion. So, or the lack of.
So I want to give a little feedback and then see if we can take a couple more comments before we close today. So Joan, I also wanted to really say that the open-ended questions that you did, one you said, can you elaborate on this, is the one I remember that it really just gave the, I think it was Michael at that point, the opportunity to just talk and be able to get out more of what was going on. The thing that I think you could have done that maybe would have made more opportunity for each of them to speak was right at the beginning when you wanted them, you had a goal in mind, which was that they would say something about that time when they had worked well together. And I think if you had stated that as a question, that might have made more opportunity for them to bring their feelings forward. So if you had said something like, you know, I'm hearing you really had a conflict. I'm wondering if you also have had times when you worked well together. And that might have made more of an opening. So that was one piece of feedback. And then I saw somebody's hand. Ruth, that's who I saw. Go ahead.
What I did hear in terms of a common value was how important this project was to both of them. And it might have been useful to comment on that.
Mhm.
I would have, as a circle keeper, probably said that I was impressed by how important this project was to both of them and how much they had invested in that to establish some common ground at some point.
That's great. Thank you. Who else? A couple more? Four? Well, then I would just want to, again, thank the three of you and the four original role players for being willing to step up. And yes, we can all give them a hand. It's not an easy thing to do, but I hope that this has given you some at least food for thought around some of the ways in which you can encourage common ground and the way you can see your own biases and be able to kind of put them aside so that you can allow the participants the opportunity to share fully. And we did just have a couple. Let me get that. So we have this a lot of resources that we will be sharing with you. We just wanted to show you we have those, and then give everybody a chance to the other facilitators a chance to say anything in closing that you want. But we just wanted to share a final quote. And thank you for the opportunity to first create, and then share this presentation with you. Carolyn, Jennifer, anything you'd like to add? And then
Yeah. I just want to say thank you again to those of you who role played. It's very brave to put yourself out there in front of everyone, and I really appreciate that. And I also wanted to just say in the list of resources there's one Harvard link. It's where basically you can test some of your biases, and they have a whole bunch of quizzes there you can take, and it'll sort of test where some of your biases may be. And it's a really fun and eye-opening way to try to identify what biases you may have that you may not realize you have. So I really encourage you all to take those tests if you can. Thank you for being here.
And I invite everyone who would like to practice in the future to send me an email. I'd be happy to arrange a few groups for practicing.
I'd also like to thank Joan for her relentless keeping us working month to month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are those is that resource list going to be emailed out maybe?
I think what I will do is just send, should I send it to you, Craig? I could send the whole PowerPoint or the Google slide link in, and you can share that with everybody.
Okay.
That has the resources.
Cool.
And we're happy to have you share anything that we presented with anybody else.
Yay.
All right. Anything else? Yeah, Carolyn?
Hi, I just wanted to tell everybody, I've been listening to a book by Malcolm Gladwell. You've probably heard of him. And it's called Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know. It has really taught me some things that I just never even thought about before. I'm listening to it on a cassette, or on not a cassette, but it just is. And I'm not so sure because it would be good to read as much as it is to listen to it, because what he does is he actually has conversations that he has played out for people to hear, and then he comments on why somebody missed something, or why this happened, or why that happened. But it's really an excellent, and I think it just plays into what we are talking about here, and being aware of things that are going on that we don't always pay attention to, or that we think are happening and that they aren't happening.
I just listened to that myself, and it is available at the library if you are on the library's Libby, and can get books. And yes, a lot of original participants in his stories speaking for themselves, really. Very
Right,
well.
right.
Erin, are you waving goodbye or you want to say something? You know, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
No, I wasn't trying to talk. I actually was feeling like we were moving in that direction. And I love the notion that it's basically a ripple. I've already thought of like 3 or 4 places to share. And I want to thank Craig, too, who sent out many things and is going to send out the other because he's really given us a tool full of tools. He's given us the box that's full of lots and lots of gems and tools today. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
That was the easy part.
And the last thing I would say is keep helping each other. You know, I mean, when you come away from a conversation and you haven't, you know, you didn't win, you didn't change your mind, but you didn't put a grenade into the scenario either. That's a success, right? So keep talking to each other and sharing and helping each other, because sometimes it can be exhausting trying to do this work. So I think we help each other. So, and someday we won't be on Zoom. And for someone like me, the work will be so much easier when we have our bodies back.
And by all means, please be open to feedback, right? Open to giving feedback and to receiving feedback. I think that's something we all need to practice as well, just to get good at.
Amen.
So is there anything else? I don't know if there's anything you do especially to end meetings or if we're just saying goodbye at this point.
I think we're just saying goodbye and we're saying thank you so much, all of you who made this happen.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the work that you do. It's so important to our community. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We hope to do more.